welcome to our next episode of Conversations with Yogis. I'm here with Melinda, of course, and we've invited our friend Lauren Munday to join us for this episode, talking about Ashtanga and her beginnings in the practice and her experience being a trauma-informed yoga teacher as well, and how that's changed her teaching. So welcome Lauren, first of all.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Happy to have you. And I'll just give you a moment to introduce yourself. How long have you been teaching yoga? And where do you teach? Are you full-time in London? Things like that.
So I have been teaching Ashtanga for about 13 years. And I teach now just at Ashtanga Yoga London. And as well as teaching Ashtanga, I also work with charities and with people one-to-one, facilitating and teaching trauma-sensitive and trauma-informed yoga. So I went kind of the traditional route of becoming an Ashtanga teacher. So I've spent a lot of time going to Mysore. I think I've been to Mysore 8 times to practice with Sharath, and I'm authorized by him. And then after doing, as well as teaching Ashtanga, I did a yoga therapy diploma, which I finished in 2015. And then just before the pandemic, I did a trauma-sensitive yoga qualification as well. I've kind of used all of those things to inform my teaching, how I teach Mysore style, and how I work with people one-to-one as well.
Yeah, sounds like it was like a natural progression into what you were interested in, and you changed from Ashtanga, the traditional route, to trauma-informed, which is quite interesting. But how did you get into yoga? When did you go to your first yoga class? Have you been always practicing?
I think I kind of got into yoga by accident. I used to go to the gym, Fitness First, in Tottenham many years ago when I was like in my early 20s, and it was like a really male-dominated kind of vibe in the gym.
Yeah.
And I was like, let me just try yoga. So I went to a class, and it was Melanie Cooper's class. I don't know if you know her. She doesn't teach Ashtanga anymore. I don't know, she lives in Bristol now. But she was my first yoga teacher, and it was Ashtanga. I didn't know anything about yoga, but I just kind of enjoyed it. I started going, practicing with her every week. And then I decided to quit my job and go travelling. So that was in 2007. And Melanie said, I'm going to be in Goa and I was going to India. So I went to Goa and I practiced with her there. And that was when I first was kind of introduced to Mysore style. I didn't really know what it is. I didn't know what Mysore was. I still didn't know while I was there. I don't know what this Mysore thing is. I didn't know it was a place or anything like that. And then from there, I kind of got more into yoga, and everywhere I was traveling, I was looking for either Mysore classes or kind of whatever I could do. And I think Elodie was saying last week about how she was doing all of the special offers. That was kind of like what I was doing when I went to different countries in Australia, in New Zealand. I did some Bikram yoga as well.
It's always comes back.
Just because of the intro. So yeah. And then Melanie had said to me, when you come back to London, you should start practicing with Hamish. That was what I did. And the rest kind of went on from there.
Yeah, makes sense. I think people, you were saying you didn't know what Mysore is. I think people in London as well, still some people don't know what's Mysore or different between Mysore and Ashtanga. So I think we can always explain the difference, so at least people know, hopefully.
Yeah, of course. So Mysore style is self-led Ashtanga practice. Self-led, but you're guided by a teacher. So it's a little bit different because your attention is really, the focus is on your breath and on your own practice, rather than if you're in a led class, you might be looking at the teacher and everyone is kind of moving together. When we practice Mysore style, there's like a fixed time slot. It might be 2 or 3 hours, and if you already know what you're doing, you already have an Ashtanga practice, you can just turn up kind of anywhere in that slot and kind of get on with your practice, and the teacher is there to guide you, to maybe teach you some more, that kind of thing. And then if you're new to the practice, you really get a one-to-one intro for your first class, so that's kind of happening within the group environment. So it's a really good way to learn if it's your first time or you're completely new to yoga, because you get that one-to-one interaction and you get to ask questions. And the beauty of it really is that rather than trying to fit your practice with the class, the teacher can really adapt it to kind of suit you. So, I mean, I know people say, oh, you've got to be fit and healthy to do Ashtanga, or young or something like that, but I think it's really not true. Like, sometimes I've worked with people in some of the trauma-informed classes that I've done that are based on Ashtanga, where they've been in a chair, or like I've had clients that are kind of in their mid-70s and things like that, and you're always able to kind of adapt the principles of the practice to kind of suit them.
Mm.
Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah, that's what I love about the Mysore room. Like, sometimes I haven't been for ages, but you go there and you see like the most diverse group of people, and yeah, you don't have to be like ever practicing second, third, fourth series to be able to go there. It's amazing the diversity of people that you see.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so good because even after your first class, you have a practice that you can do anywhere. So
yeah,
if you can't afford to go to class, or you're traveling or something like that, you've got your mat, you can just get on with your practice anywhere, and I think that's like a really special gift to be able to give people.
and I think it's important because I notice lots these days that people are really reliant on their teachers for their practice completely, and I think it's really important to teach people yoga so they can go and do it by themselves and have a complete practice where they're not dependent on you, because we're ultimately teachers and we want to be passing on information to people and not needing people to come to our classes to get that feeling.
Yeah, it's like following you like in an automatic robotic mode, like, okay, she says this, I'm there, but if you say something a little bit different, they still go into the old things, like, no, I did not say that, you're not paying attention. Well, that's true. I try on my classes, because I always start with 3 A's and B's. Try to encourage people with B's, especially with 3 B's, that go in your own pace, because some people like to take it very slow, some people faster. That go in your own pace. Don't wait for me to say step the foot forward, or don't rush. But people still hesitant, and it's like, I've been doing this for so many times, just go on with it. But when they start getting on with it, it's quite nice that they're like, okay, I can do my 3 A's and B's, it's at least something. But especially when you do vinyasa flows, I guess it's harder to pass on sequences, but Ashtanga, you can always pass it on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, I don't know, it just becomes more of a moving meditation when you're doing it at your own pace. I mean, I've been to Ashley's rocket class before and I really enjoy it, but I'm spending a lot of time kind of looking and seeing what's coming next, whereas like when you get into your practice and you've memorized the Ashtanga sequence, it really does help you to kind of turn inwards a bit more, and I think maybe learn a bit more about yourself. And that was kind of the side of yoga that was also really attractive to me. When I was traveling, when I first started practicing, I was in a bookshop in New Zealand and I found a book of the Yoga Sutras, and yeah, I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was just really inspiring to me, and kind of thinking about the way that you're really in control, like you're in control of your own thoughts. And that was a really big kind of life-changing thing to me as someone, like as a teenager, I had a lot of like issues with depression, and I took a lot of drugs and things like that, and then kind of reading that and going, oh, I'm not actually my thoughts, I'm separate to them, was a really big moment for me. So yeah.
Yeah, that's what I love about the practice too. It can be quite confrontational, but you have to confront those parts of yourself that maybe aren't so ideal and work with them to be able to release them and move through it instead of just ignoring it. and suppressing.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think that's, for me, that is the thing that, I love the physical practice and everything, but what I'm able to learn about myself from yoga that was kind of the thing that inspired me and made me really want to teach. And I guess now I'm studying to be a psychotherapist, so I guess it's kind of the same. To me, the things are really similar. They're both about kind of discovering about yourself and how you are in the world and how you are with other people. So yeah.
So when you came back from India, you said you started practicing with Hamish.
Yeah, so I come back from like a round the world trip, so I'd been gone for 9 months.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
and then,
around the world.
Yeah, well, I didn't go to South America, but I went everywhere else. Yeah, and then when I came back, I started practicing with Hamish.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then how long before you ended up being a teacher or taking a teacher training?
I think so. That was in 2007, and then I went back to. I just worked in admin before. I was working in HR, so I went back to kind of doing that. And I think it got to the stage where, it was a really nice place to work. My boss was great, and she was like, "Right, you have to do this HR qualification now." And I was just thinking, I'm really not interested in that at all. Like, I'm really passionate about yoga. I was going to Hamish's every morning, getting really sweaty. Then there's no shower there. I was like getting on the tube, going to work. So yeah, I was really not interested in that. So I just thought, okay, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to go to Mysore. So I went to Mysore for 3 months in 2010. And then Melanie, my first teacher, was doing a teacher training in Goa for, I think it was like 11 weeks or something. So I went from Mysore for those first 3 months, then to do the teacher training with Melanie. So yeah, kind of went from there. And then when I came back, a little while after I got back, Hamish asked me if I wanted to assist him. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. And you've been doing that ever since?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, assisting or working at AYL kind of all of that time. So yeah.
AYL is Ashtanga Yoga London in Euston.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not familiar with it, and Lauren runs the Mysore program in the evening there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you do your own Mysore stuff on Sundays.
On Sundays, yeah, in Victoria. So I have a Sunday morning Mysore at a community centre in Victoria as well. So
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Do you like teaching lead classes?
I like teaching a counted lead class. Yeah, because it's just kind of everyone sticking with the flow and things like that. I think I kind of got a bit bored of teaching regular Ashtanga led classes, if I'm honest, because you're just doing the same thing every time. And it's kind of challenging when you have different levels of people in the class. So I kind of stopped doing that, I think, probably in 2018. Yeah, so sometimes I teach like trauma-informed yoga, which kind of has an element of my Ashtanga kind of practice in it. But yeah, I don't really teach kind of mixed level lead classes anymore, because I think the best way to learn Ashtanga, is Mysore style. So yeah, I would encourage people to kind of do that.
Yeah, I've had students ask me if they have to attend the whole 3 hours
Yeah.
of the Mysore. I'm like, no, you can go there. Your practice actually might be half an hour. You just go talk to the teacher and start from there. Like, even if you've never done yoga before, you're going to go and learn some salutations and how to breathe properly, so it is like super accessible for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Or people that have been doing a bit of Ashtanga will say, oh, I can't go to Mysore because I don't know the sequence or something like that. But it's really not a problem. That's what I'm there for. We kind of, if people don't know the sequence exactly, I might get them to repeat smaller sections of it so that they can remember it, and by the end of their first class they'll kind of have an idea. And that was really how I learned myself as well, because I'd started off going to lead classes, and then I started going to Mysore, and I don't think in the beginning I obviously didn't remember all of the sequence, but the teacher kind of helped me along with it. So I think I think once people get there, it's not as nerve-wracking as it seems before.
Yeah, true. And the nice thing is it makes you learn the sequence, because I was the same. Like, if I wanted to practice yoga on my own, I didn't remember anything.
Mhm.
But then you go to learn Mysore and you have to learn it to be able to do it by yourself, so it makes you remember, and then that's your base to do anything else. What was it like practicing with Sharath in India?
Yeah, it's been great. So I think the first time I went, 2010, Guruji Jois had just died like the year before, so it was Sharath's first year of kind of being in charge of the Shala, and it was a really small group compared to what it is now anyway. I think there were just a few rows of us kind of lined up for chanting class. Now it's kind of like super busy. But yeah, it's been great. Just even, I mean, practicing with Sharath in the Shala and just kind of the whole experience of being in India. So, I mean, I guess I've probably spent a couple of years in total in Mysore, and it's just a really great way to kind of learn more about the culture from where yoga comes from, and attend kind of different classes. I've studied Sanskrit there, and there's a few other philosophy teachers that you can study with while you're there as well. And yeah, it's just I've always kind of had a really good experience when I've been there, and just the chance to focus on yourself and your practice and stuff like that. I guess for me the only bad thing is I really don't like waking up at 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
So early.
Yeah, so if you start practice at 4:30, it's actually 4 o'clock because you have to be there 15 minutes early, and they have this thing called Shala time, which means Shala time is 15 minutes ahead of normal time. So if your class starts at 4:30, you actually have to be there at 4. And then, yeah, I don't know, by the time you've had a shower, kind of woken up, done your thing in the morning, had a coffee or whatever, yeah, it's probably like at 1:30 or something. And then I would go to practice, come home, get back into bed, and then you wake up and it's like, oh, did I even practice today?
Kind of crazy.
Why do you have to start so early?
That's just like, because I guess because there's so many people, and also the idea is what's it called, the Brahma Muhurta, the best time in the morning to practice yoga.
Yeah.
Before the sunrise. So yeah, I think there's that, and also, I mean, sometimes I was practicing early and then assisting, and like you don't even the last people are finishing their practice at like 11:30 or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it's just a long day.
So you had to practice, and then there was more people practicing after that.
Yeah. Like it's just continuous. Yeah. So
Okay.
from like 4:30 until maybe 10 or 11 in the morning, it's just a continuous flow of people, and like Sharath is there the whole time. And then I think we'd maybe do 2.5 hours of assisting. So there might be you and 3 other assistants or something, and everyone would do different shifts. So yeah, and I mean that was really fun. Tiring, but yeah.
And you're going there for a month, right?
So anywhere between a month and 3 months. So
Okay.
yeah, some trips I went for 2 or 3 months, and I think I've been maybe a couple of trips for 1 month.
Yeah.
As well. So yeah.
Dedication. It's good. Dedicated. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, but it was like a kind of, I don't know, I was young and single, no children. It kind of makes it a bit easier to be able to go. I mean, it was a lot to save up the money kind of every time and disrupt it to my life, I guess, but I kind of feel like also another thing, money in the UK compared to money in India, especially 10 years ago, it went a lot further. So yeah, in that way I kind of feel like I was lucky to be able to have the experience to get to go. So yeah.
Because now they have that massive center that fits like, what, like, is it 300 people or something?
Yeah, but I still, I mean, the last time I went in 2019, we were only doing lead classes in that centre. Now he has all of his classes there, but I think still he keeps it to about 60 people for the Mysore. It just means that they only need to do one lead class. They used to kind of have to do back-to-back lead classes because everyone wouldn't fit in. So so twice a week we would have a lead class. So on a Friday it would be a counted lead primary, and then it started off on a Friday and it moved to a Saturday. And then on the first practice day of the week, it would either be lead primary for people doing that or lead intermediate for people doing intermediate series. So yeah, that was always fun as well. I don't know if you've ever done that, Ashley. But
No, I've been to India. I've done teacher training in India, but I was in Goa and I did my 200 hours there, and then me and my friends that I was backpacking with went to Mysore afterwards, and like we went to the Ashtanga Research Institute.
Yeah, the one in Lakshmipuram, the first chalet.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that you had to apply way ahead of time and stay there for a month. Like we wanted to just go practice, and they're like, no, sorry. So we did some investigating. We found these ladies there. They went by the name Three Sisters.
Oh, I love the Three Sisters.
Yeah.
So did you practice with them?
Yeah, we did some private lessons with them. They were amazing.
Yeah, they're so
nice.
Lovely.
Yeah.
They make lunch as well.
Yeah. We had lunch and like chatted with them about like their experience with the one had done a lot of training with Ashtanga Jois back in the day. She was telling me, and like I think their mom was there, and she like had every breakfast ready for us and like a little juice, and we were sitting and eating with our hands as you do in India with their family. Yeah. And we wanted to ask you about your thoughts on not being certified by Sharath or Ashtanga Jois and then teaching Ashtanga, because I have mixed feelings about it, because like I'm not certified, but I've done so many hours with certified teachers with Mysore. I couldn't even tell you how much, and like random bits here with like David Swenson and David Williams, like well-respected teachers, and I teach Ashtanga and I'm perfectly comfortable teaching it and feel like I have all the knowledge I need. But then I know a lot of people are also teaching Ashtanga not having done that, and then they're teaching a modified sequence where they're leaving out a bunch of postures, and I have mixed emotions about that. So I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what I said, like what I was just saying, for me it feels like a privilege that I was able to go to Mysore all of those times and study, and that's not going to be possible for everyone, you know. Like if you've got a family, imagine if you're a single mum and your kid's at school, you're not going to be able to go to Mysore. If you live in another country maybe where the exchange rate's not so good, it's going to be a lot more expensive for you to go. And I think that we need teachers from all different backgrounds, so I kind of feel like you should still be able to teach if you haven't been authorized by Sharath for that reason, you know. And I know lots of great teachers like Ashley and many others that haven't been to Mysore, and you can still learn a lot from them. That said, I think it's good to kind of still maybe study with authorized and certified teachers when you can, and like yoga's from India, so I think if you can get to go to India, well, it's from South Asia, if you can get to go to India and study, then like it's a really valuable experience if you're able to do it. But I don't know, I just think that it's not possible for everyone, and we shouldn't make that a barrier to people being teachers, because they could still have a lot to offer.
Yeah, I agree. I was just wondering, because I've had some instances with students that get really upset that I'm not authorized, and I don't know. That's just like their personal feeling about it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I can do. I'm teaching you the sequence, you know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
But you never know where they come from, what experience they had. Might have some kind of trauma or memory, and then so maybe might have just triggered it, and it's actually not you.
That's what I felt it was.
Yeah, or maybe someone was saying that they kind of working kind of field, and then someone has disregarded their experience because they were not authorized by someone else, so they wanted to put it over to someone else. So it might have been how you taught or anything. She or he just had some problems from the past and just projected on you. Yeah. Because wanted to pass it on. Because sometimes people do pass on their traumas and problems onto people they interact with. So maybe that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you have to have a thick skin as a yoga teacher, otherwise you can take a bunch of baggage home. Sometimes,
yes.
But yeah, I think kind of the problematic thing that I see sometimes is people go to me, they come to Mysore and they've like, I've done an Ashtanga training and they can't even do a sun salutation. And yeah, to me, that is problematic. I'm thinking to myself, like, where did you learn this? How is someone calling their training an Ashtanga training when people don't know Ashtanga, and then they're going out and teaching more people something that they really have no idea about. So yeah, I guess there's kind of, you've got to find the kind of point in between.
Yeah. Well, they get around it by calling the trainings Ashtanga Vinyasa.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do that. I mean, because my main training was because I'm rocket trained, but we did Ashtanga for 100 hours, then I moved to rocket because they said that you have to respect the practice that it came from. And I cover Ashtanga classes, but I'm always very straightforward. I'm not a Mysore teacher, and that's why I don't even, if someone offered me before Ashtanga class, and it's like, I don't really want to teach it because I'm not properly trained, but I'm happy to cover it every now and then because I can teach a sequence. But I think it's important to be like open about it and say to people as well. But I think you have that in rocket as well. I have a math teacher and they're like, I have this pocket rocket sequence. Like, not sure what's pocket rocket. And then I saw the sequence. It was a mesh of rocket 2, and was a bit of rocket 1. It was just a bit of a mixture. It's like, I'm not sure you train with, but I think you would need to train with someone who was coming from Larry Schultz and then under Larry Schultz, because otherwise you get all these weird sequences.
Yeah, and it just ends up not being rocket.
It's just not being rocket.
It is vinyasa, but it's not the proper sequence.
And you also have a set sequence there as well. You can come away from it. It has the wiggle room, but also you have a kind of a setup that you kind of follow. And I was like, this doesn't look like this. So I think not just Ashtanga, I'm sure maybe the Dharma and all these other practices have their own set sequences that you should be kind of like following and deriving from. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. They all have like similar styles.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like, go to someone who you think was certified by someone and you trust their knowledge with
exactly. And I mean, in Ashtanga, I'm like, as an authorized teacher, you're not allowed to offer teacher trainings or anything like that. But what we can have is assistants who are like apprentices in the Mysore room. So I kind of feel like that's a better way to learn, because they're kind of there every day or every week. And that was, I mean, I did a teacher training as well, but that was kind of how I learned to teach, and I learned about the philosophy and everything like that, which I think is really important. And I guess me and Ashley have talked about it before. There's a lot of teacher trainings out there that are kind of about taking money from people and not really teaching them anything. And it does frustrate me a bit when people come to me and say, I'm an Ashtanga teacher, and they haven't really been taught properly, which is not their fault. But yeah, it's a shame.
That's why I think teacher training should be regulated, because it's regulated by yoga aliens, but you could just put together a kind of like a curriculum and submit it, and they just approve it, but they don't even see how I agree with you that I think it should be regulated, because I think there's so many teachers coming out and everyone's very keen to learn, but the levels they learn and the experience is so different than what we had. And I've been trained for a long time, but not as long time as you guys, but it's been changing so much, I think, since it's every year it's getting just too many teacher trainings.
Well, then running them twice a year is like their base revenue model.
That's money making rather than actually teaching or changing people's lives or passing on knowledge. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like we need to make money, so let's do teacher trainings.
Yeah.
And it's hard because it's hard to make money as a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I can see how people are kind of drawn to doing teacher trainings. But when you have a teacher training that you've got to fill, then it becomes that you'll let more people in than maybe you would have done if you were kind of really thinking about who is ready to teach and who has an established practice and stuff like that. So yeah.
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 Exactly.
Yeah, because my teachers, because I haven't had much practice when I started practicing, but I was really dedicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the end of the training, my teacher came up to me that when I saw you on the first day, I was worried that we were thinking to might not let you get through, but we could see how dedicated you were, so we just let you get on with it. But they did check people of how they progress and how they turn up to classes. And because my practice was non-existent before, so it's just only my dedication, and I was really willing to learn and putting 100% into it. So I'm thankful that they didn't kick me out and send me to practice for a few more years. But they were right, because they were like, you have to keep an eye on the person who's practicing, because they have to be teachers then. Although now everyone's becoming a teacher after doing a teacher training. I went there to learn for myself.
Yeah.
And I just decided, like, actually, I think I can do this, I want to do this. So it's harder nowadays.
It's mixed.
It's a mix.
I've met so many people who have done their teacher trainings and then like maybe they had intentions to be teachers and then decided not to.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of get a sense of what it's like when you're finished. I mean, it's hard. How do you be a full-time yoga teacher in London?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Because we talk about that with some other teachers too. But what do you have to do to make that a reality?
Yeah, I think it takes it takes a long time. I mean, when I first started, I was the same as you. I was like running around, teaching classes everywhere, going to teaching in a gym, another gym, then kind of, just exhausting myself, basically. Getting up really early in the morning, and then I think once I started to teach my own Mysore program, maybe got slightly better, but I used to work insane hours. I would get up and go to practice for 4:30, start teaching at 6:30 till 9:30, and then I'd maybe have a break, and then I would teach again in the evening. Sometimes I would cover for people. There were times when I'd taught like 8 hours of Mysore a day or something, which is insane. It's insane. So it was kind of really hard. And I think, and I got burnt out, I suppose. And that was why, like I said, I got bored of teaching lead classes, 3 lead classes of Ashtanga a day. And you're saying, like, you're teaching exactly the same sequence. It kind of wears you out. And I think, I don't know, once I started to teach more Mysore, it got a bit easier because obviously you're in the same place for 3 hours. I gradually started to make a bit more money. But it was really hard. I had a lot of like mental health stuff around anxiety and things like that, around not making enough money. And then it kind of got better before the pandemic, and then the pandemic came, and then it was like, oh shit, I had a job yesterday, now I have no job at all. Actually, I did have one job which kind of kept me going through the whole thing, and it was really amazing. I was working with Grenfell survivors, teaching yoga, and we had 2 classes a week, which obviously went online from the pandemic, and that was kind of my main class. And it was just all the big support for each other, like twice a week getting together and kind of doing yoga online. That was that kind of kept me going a bit, but it was hard. And I don't know, personally, I know some people still do it, but for me, teaching Mysore online was just not for me. God, no. I mean, I think I quit my job because I didn't want to stare at a screen all day, and then I was staring at a screen all day, going, "Can you move your foot a little bit to the left?" Like, things like that, you know. So yeah, that aspect of it, I didn't really enjoy. And then obviously when we came back to work after the pandemic, things had changed so much. So I had a really busy, me and Tom had a really busy evening program at Ashtanga Yoga London. We'd have like 15, 20 people every evening. And then we reopened after the pandemic and everyone was working at home. And we're in central London. So like it went to like 3 or 4 people or something. So yeah, it was really, really hard. Like it was hard to stay motivated. It was, again, hard to kind of make a living. And gradually it's kind of built up again, but I don't think it will ever get back to what it was before. It's probably the same with all yoga classes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I kind of, from there, moved a bit more into doing trauma-informed yoga, a bit more work with charities, and I do a lot of one-to-one, so either trauma-informed or Ashtanga, so yeah.
And how did you get into trauma-informed yoga?
I think so. In Mysore, there's a lady called Emily who used to run a charity called Almala, and I knew her from Mysore, and I think we met one day at a cafe in Mysore, it's probably about 10 years ago now, and she was like, oh, I've got this charity that works with people who have been displaced or are like claiming asylum or have refugee status, and she just wondered if I wanted to teach a class. So I started working for them, and they did a training before, and I'd already done a yoga therapy diploma, so that kind of brought in a bit of yoga for mental health and for trauma and stuff as well. So yeah, I started working for them, and we've had a class now at Ashtanga Yoga London for about 8 years. So we do that every Thursday, which is really nice. And from there, I guess, kind of going to these places and teaching all of the different classes with different groups, I noticed that some people weren't able to like stay with the class and they kind of checked out a bit. And I don't know if you've read the book, The Body Keeps the Score.
I haven't, I still haven't read it.
It's on my reading, it's on my to-do list.
It's probably standing on one of my shelves.
So I read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and there's a whole chapter in it about yoga. I was kind of really interested in that yoga method, so I did a bit more research, and it's called TCT-SY, so Trauma Sensitive Yoga, and it was kind of designed by this guy, David Emerson in Boston, and he worked with experts in the field of trauma and also survivors, and kind of designed this yoga method, which is designed specifically for survivors of complex trauma. So complex trauma is relational trauma, so it's a trauma that has kind of been repeated throughout life rather than a single kind of one-off event where you might have PTSD. Complex PTSD is a bit more about relationships and things. So you have the symptoms of PTSD, but there might be other symptoms like disassociation, difficulty with relationships, that kind of thing. Because if we think about trauma, most of those types of traumas are created within a relationship. So it's like a abuse of power, a breakdown of trust, all of those kinds of things. And when people go through that constantly and repeatedly, they start to maybe disassociate from their body. So it's about working with introspection and working with the relationship within the class or within the group to kind of help people to heal from trauma.
Yeah, nice.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's like, yeah, it's great to kind of meet different people and work with them and facilitate that. So
That's really journey.
So you teach specific trauma-informed classes?
Yeah, so at the moment I generally just do that one-to-one. Sometimes when I have enough people, I will run a group class as well, which is like a fixed group. So maybe if we do a 6-week program or something like that. or I work with a couple of charities doing it as well. So yeah.
How people can find these kind of classes? Because for example, I haven't heard that you can find these kind of classes. So how would someone try to find a class? Would they have to hear about, like hopefully they're gonna now hear about this type of classes, but would they, like, do you do it in centers, community centers, or not really in studios?
Or like with a mental health practitioner, like, are you recommended through them, or?
Yes, so it can be a bit of both. So sometimes people who are therapists, so the training that I did, you can either do it as a yoga teacher or you can do it as a therapist.
Okay.
Because in order to participate in TCTSY, you have to be in therapy, because obviously a lot of challenging thoughts and emotions might come up kind of while you're doing the practice. And as a person who's not a therapist, I can't help you to process that. So the idea is that it's an adjunctive treatment that works alongside therapy. So it can be offered through therapists, it can be offered like I do in kind of a small group setting, or you can do it one-to-one. So the organisation that I'm part of, the Centre for Trauma and Embodiment, they obviously have a list of all of their teachers, so you might be able to find it that way. So it's kind of a worldwide network, so there'll be teachers probably in your local area or people that offer it online, so that could be another way to kind of access it as well. But yeah, I think it's quite challenging because doing it in a yoga studio is not always kind of the right environment to offer that kind of practice. I normally hire the space at Ashtanga Yoga London when I want to do a group class. Hi Terry.
Joining it.
Because it's kind of like it's kind of a small environment. You know, going to a big kind of yoga studio might feel a bit intimidating for people.
Yeah.
Space not.
I think it's good and necessary these days for teachers to have like some contact with some sort of trauma and language education, and I've done like workshops on it to just be informed about the language you use and be really considerate about like how you trigger people using inclusive language, etc., etc. And then I just came back from mentoring on a yoga teacher training program. In the afternoon, they had a trauma-informed session. So now some 200-hour trainings are including this as a module within their training, which I think is amazing. And because language is super important. I've just been hearing a lot of stories lately about teachers saying things like targeting students in class and like dismissing their practice and saying, oh, you're not good enough, like look at that person, look at what not to do, and yes, I'm not joking, like ridiculing students in class. And it's just so inappropriate as a yoga teacher to use that type of language in a public setting, because you have no idea how those words are going to land with individuals in the room and give them like some kind of traumatic experience or emotional reaction where you've ruined the rest of their day. Like it's super important to have, you can be like a charismatic teacher and you can be jokey, but there's a way to do it where you're not acting like that.
Yeah, and that whole kind of mean teacher thing, it just makes no sense to me. We want people to have an experience of being in their body, and you can't do that when you don't feel safe. You know,
No.
We all know how the nervous system works.
Yeah.
If you're in your sympathetic nervous system, then you're not going to be able to have that experience. So kind of shaming people in class, being mean, you're kind of doing the opposite of yoga. So yeah.
Making the class about them.
Yeah.
Instead of your students having a transformative experience that is healing in whatever way it could be healing to them. It's just taken. And that's not cool. And then we wanted to also like touch on the kind of relation with that, the guru model of the yoga teacher and student, and how like we saw what happened with a number of
teachers.
very senior yoga teachers just taking advantage and abusing their power in the guru-student relationship, and how that actually needs to be dismantled. Like, you know, I tell my students, I don't know more than you. I'm my own teacher. You're my own teacher. You're your own teacher. You need to listen to what's right for you. Don't look to me to solve your problems. You have the answers inside you doing this practice that I will facilitate for you if you come to my class. But you don't give yourself to somebody expecting that they're going to solve all the problems in your life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the fact that there have been so many abuses of power, including in Ashtanga, kind of speaks to the idea that, that there are problematic power dynamics that can arise in yoga. And I think at one end of the spectrum, you've got something like what happened with Guruji Jois and his students. At the other end, you've got kind of people just feeling like they can't do the practice that they want to do in the class, or the practice that's kind of best for them, or in Ashtanga not feeling like they can't say no to an adjustment or something like that. And we've got that kind of whole spectrum of issues that can happen if we as teachers don't kind of work to manage the power dynamic. And obviously there's an inherent power imbalance within the yoga teacher relationship, and it's up to us how we kind of manage that through, like you said, the language that we use, offering choices, what else? Like making sure that we obtain consent if we are going to touch someone. Also being open, you know, I've like written a lot on my website where people can find out about what happened within Ashtanga. If a student asks me about it, I'm going to be open and tell them, and not kind of hide behind it. You know, I had a student the other day that wanted to borrow books on yoga, and we were kind of talking about them, and Yoga Mala was there, and I took the time to explain to her what had happened, and obviously read that book, but kind of keep that in mind. Being predictable, letting people know what to expect, which is a big element of kind of trauma sensitive yoga as well. Just making sure people know what they're expect, like what do people wear when they do yoga classes, what's going to happen when they get to the class. Kind of when people come to my Mysore class for the first time, I spend a bit of time kind of talking to them about I am going to be walking around the room. Sometimes we offer adjustments, like talking about how they can make decisions around whether they want them and all of that kind of thing. And I just think that that's really important, even whether people want to do the chant or not. Kind of, I make that a choice. If you want to join in for the chant, come to the front of the mat, you know, because we don't know what's happened to people, what kind of experience they might have had. They might have been in a cult or something like that. They might have had a really negative experience with kind of religious practices, all of those things. So it's like we're trying to give people as much information as possible and really allow them to make a decision about what they feel like is best for them.
Yeah. Even closing your eyes can be a trigger.
Yeah, closing your eyes, I remember kind of thinking it was really important when I first started teaching, you have to lie down and take rest at the end of the class. I used to turn the light out and then go and sit at the front of the class, and I'd kind of get annoyed if people had to leave early or something, but kind of understanding that it can be really, really scary for someone to have to lie on the floor in a room full of people, you know, they might not want to close their eyes, that can be scary. So how are we going to offer alternatives to taking rest? Also, I don't mind if you don't want to take rest. If you want to get up and leave, fair enough, you might just want to leave because you're in that hyper kind of busy state and you want to get in the shower as quickly as possible, but actually you might want to leave because it's terrifying for you to kind of lie down in the room. So I'm just going to kind of let people make their own choice, which I think is really important.
That comes with experience with teaching too. Like we talked about this with LEDs, the more you've been teaching, the more like relaxed you are about what people are doing in the class, and
not trying to control everything.
Yeah, and not trying to make it perfect, because
Yeah.
that's not a thing, and tell people that they have to do this. So I think that's like a very, like, I don't want to say just new yoga teachers, because it's not all new yoga teachers, but it's a very like thing that some people do at the beginning, where they have to teach yoga in this specific way because that's what they learned is the right way.
Yeah.
But then after a while of viewing so many people practicing and developing depth in your own practice, you realize like you actually have no idea what people are going through. You change every day. Just let them get what they need out of the class, and make it a safe environment where they have agency to do their own thing and feel like they have permission to, and not be reliant on the teacher to be like, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do this? It's like, just do whatever you want to.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Within reason, that's not disruptive to the entire class.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things when you first start teaching, I know I was like very much thinking, what would Sharath want me to do? What would Hamish want me to do? Rather than kind of looking at the person in front of me and thinking, actually, what does that person need? And I think that is a really important part of teaching, kind of just centering that person and thinking about what they need, kind of stepping back, not letting your ego get involved. And that's kind of where the yoga philosophy side of it, practice kind of comes into your teaching as well. I think kind of asking yourself all of those questions, like, why do I feel like this person should do that? And can I explain to them why I think that they might want to try it this way, rather than it just kind of being dogmatic, this is the way it's done. If you can explain to someone, I think you should maybe try it like this because it might help you with this, and then it's up to them to kind of figure out if that does work for them or not. So yeah.
I just had a reminder. So I remember one of my classes, this lady asked me like during class if her side angle pose was the right way it was supposed to be. And what am I supposed to be feeling? I'm like, well, it looks good to me. Like, what are you feeling? She wanted a very specific answer, and I didn't give it to her. And then she walked out of the room.
Oh no. But yeah, you don't know.
You don't know. You can't give specific answers. I'm like, well, you could work on, feeling like you're opening your hip or opening up your right side body, but I don't know what you feel in your body. Like, maybe you don't feel anything when you're stretching like that. Maybe you're feeling lows.
Yeah. And
So,
especially during the class, it's so hard to answer these questions because also I don't know your practice. I don't know.
Yeah, I've never seen her before.
Yeah. I think that I had on the other day, someone asked me in the end of the class, like, any feedback about my practice? It's like, well, this is the first time I'm seeing you, so I don't have much, because I don't know where you came from and everything, so, but people don't realize it, I guess. And from there, I heard Avinash told me that you work with refugees and you organise programs, you work with charities. Can you tell us more about who you're working with or what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, so the main class that I wanted to talk about today is the class that I teach at Ashtanga Yoga London for most people are either in the asylum system or they've got refugee status, and it's run through our mala, and Hamish very kindly offers us the space for free to run the class, and it's been going about 8 years, and we're actually kind of looking to raise some money at the moment, because although the class has minimal costs, we were paying for everyone's travel, and I guess, as you know, travel in London is super expensive, and a lot of people get placed kind of right on the outskirts of London, so they've got really expensive journeys to kind of make it to the class. And for the whole time the class has been going, there have been funds to pay for people's travel, and now just with the climate and everything, there's not the money available, so we're really trying to raise money, maybe look for a sponsor or something that can help support people coming to the class, because we went from having 15 people every week to maybe having 4 or 5. And I guess, I don't know if you know, but kind of if you're in the asylum process, you're given £38 a week to live on. So that's to kind of buy all of your food, all of your travel, everything. and some people's journey is like £14 or something. So it's just not possible for them to come to yoga, and people really benefit from it, you know, just the experience of kind of taking some time to be in their body, having the community that we have, kind of the opportunity to choose what they want to do within the class, how much they want to participate in, and maybe learning some kind of regulation techniques that they can try when they've got a court date or like a big meeting or something like that, you know, anything from, I mean, sometimes people can't focus on their breath, but we were doing like kind of shaking and jumping around or something as a way to kind of help people reduce their anxiety before going through something quite stressful. And it's just been really kind of sad the last few weeks that we haven't been able to kind of have as many people in the class. So that is something that we are looking to raise money for, and I'm going to start a crowdfunder, I think, this week. So if anyone is interested in helping out, maybe if they've got something through their work where they offer money to a charity or something like that, it is a registered charity, so there's an opportunity for all the kind of tax things that go with that. So if anyone is listening and is interested in kind of helping out, then it would be really good if they got in contact with me.
We can put it in the show notes to easy access.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, how to contact Lauren and do that. Sounds, money is just tight everywhere, isn't it? So sorry to hear that, but hopefully we'll find some helpful people listening.
Yeah.
And then we also should mention our adjustments workshop.
So that's exciting, isn't it?
We're doing that on Saturday, October 14th.
Yes.
From 9:30 till 5:30. So full day of workshops on learning how to adjust properly with trauma-informed approach. And it's a really fun workshop. The two of us do it together, and we have loads of experience. So come yoga teachers. And that's in Victoria, in London.
Yeah, so it's really like Ashley's got loads of experience with all of with Rocket and everything. She taught me a few adjustments that I didn't know from some of the Rocket series, and obviously I've been teaching Mysore for many years. Like, I've assisted Sharath I think 3 times, and like at least 10 years of working with Hamish. So we're kind of bringing all of our experience together to look at adjustments through a trauma-informed lens as well, and hopefully teach you things that you can start to use in your class kind of straight away. So and we've added an extra hour to the workshop, so that's going to give everyone a lot more time to kind of practice their adjusting skills and everything that we've covered.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So, any more questions? Any more things you want to share? Well, we can sign off there then. Thank you, Lauren, for coming and sharing everything with us. That was really interesting, really informative. I learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. I never heard about trauma-informed yoga. I didn't hear much about it, so I think it's quite interesting. And that's a good thing that you have all these options nowadays, and people just need to hear about it from friends, from podcasts. So it's always good and informative. So thank you very much.
Good. Thank you guys for having me. It's been really nice.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.